of some ewes on a pasture that I rent by the lake. All of these pictures I took myself, and any numbers that I grabbed from books that I own. Yes, I have a disclaimer. I am not a nutritionist. I'm not a vet. There's a lot of things that I'm not. I utilize my resources. I'm glad Jerry came in because we're going to pick on him because he's been a great resource for me when it comes to the cover crop side of my operation and the grazing side of it. And so just wanted to be clear, like anything that I say, it might not work for you, but it has worked for me, or it hasn't worked for me, and now I know what to say and how it doesn't work. And so.
Hold on, just to rewind, you went through the mentorship program at Soil Health Coalition, and that's how you met Jerry? Or did you
No, well, I knew Jerry before Soil Health Coalition was even a thing.
Right on.
And he was I was one of the first members. I mean, I think Jennifer Hahn just signed me up. I don't think it was optional. And yeah, she just did it. And anyway, this is the point. Is there a pointer on this?
Yeah, there should be.
It doesn't really show up on the screen.
It doesn't work real high.
That's fine. I brought my stick, my Soil Health Coalition stick.
Keep it old school.
Right? Jerry sold me this cover crop. This is the first one. I was not getting government subsidies. I just looked at it and decided this is what's going to have to work for me because I was did not have enough acres to provide for the sheep that I needed to make anything worthwhile. So I grew up by Northfield, just up 35, well, actually 60 to 35 here. And my mother, she worked at Holden Farms, the farrowing houses there. I spent most of my time with her. I mean, school, I was never one to let my schooling get in the way of my education. That's just, that's very important. You're going to find that that's been very important to me. Yeah, when I turned 16, we grew up, I grew up poor, like extremely poor. My parents split up. We ended up in Northfield, like poor to the point where my kids get upset with me when they don't have a bus snack. I don't even know what that is. There's so much food that they can have food on the bus. That's really foreign to me. But anyway, I turned 16. My great uncle went into the nursing home, and he had a car. They said, "Hey, we'll sell you this car for half price." I bought the car. Ended up that next week had to put an alternator in it and a battery in it. I filled it with gas, put insurance on it. If I wanted a car, I had to have a cell phone, and I had 84 cents. Is all no parents to help feed this along. Don't get me wrong, my mother got promoted. She got a better and better job. Life got better, but that's kind of the background, what we came from. I'm extremely frugal. Started working at a dairy right on I-35 for a guy, great mentor for me. And like I say, we lived in town at that time, and I worked for him. I could make $65 a day before 6 a.m. and after 4 p.m., milking. It was every other morning and every night, so that's kind of how I started making money, and decided I was going to go to college at SDSU. Was not going to borrow money to go to college. I thought that was a waste of money. Betting on yourself might be squandering your cash. You just never know. I didn't see the value of it. I thought I'd get a job. I did a sales internship at Ecolab. That's where I learned the power. We were doing third shift. We were selling soap, industrial soap, and doing a lot of third shift. And I was getting 40 hours in by Wednesday. Start Sunday morning at 2 a.m., get your hours in. Then I go back to my uncle's place and farm. And anyway, that's where I learned the power of you didn't make any sales when you were trying to work. Even though you're trying to pitch this stuff and get things put together, we couldn't make any sales at that time. but you made a lot of sales at noon when you took them out for dinner. Because they're all managers, they're not owners. You can work with an owner during business hours, but the managers, that you have to kind of wine and dine them a little bit, makes them a little happier. But anyway, graduated college 2012. I bought my first ewes kind of in that meantime. Then in 2014, I was able to pick up 80 acres around where I live, and now I've grown to 400 ewes and 400 acres. Any ideas why I'm trying to keep that at 400? That's a good relationship. So what would a goal be on, if you're farming, let's just say it's 80 acres because you got to work with rounder numbers. What's a profit goal on 80 acres? 40, 50, 60, would you be happy if you made $40 an acre on something you were farming? Is that acceptable? Getting, kind of, maybe. What about on a ewe? Try to make $40. A good goal would be $40 per ewe, and that's $20 a head. And if she's given 2 lambs, and we can get bogged down in the facts of, you might only get 180% lamb crop, stuff like that. But a goal per ewe, what you're feeding is about $40. So I try to keep those ratios in check in case. Maybe like 2024, we didn't have much of a crop. We're at crop insurance levels. But maybe made a little more money on the ewe flock. So you don't want to get caught up in not producing enough feed for what you have. You need to have those acres kind of in check. And so that's what I found has been working good for me. So for us, it's a family effort. I'm making these kids work all the time. Emma's the middle child. She's going to be the livestock. All she thinks about. She goes to the barn before she goes to the school bus. Charlie, he's 8 years old. That's his first time baling hay for me. And he's a good machinery operator. Then Hazel, the baby, she has spina bifida. She had surgery when she was 26 weeks pregnant. In utero. So she just took her first steps here this summer with her crutches, but she's always out in the barn helping. And so she does not have the hydrocephalus. She's not deformed. She's just a goofball, and that's why she's sticking her tongue out. And so anyway, so I was feeding 250 ewes on 80 acres. And I did not have enough feed. Flat out, did not have enough feed. So, and I think it was 2015, mutual friend of ours got me and Jerry together, and he sold me some oats and peas. And I seeded them in April. It snowed. They came up. They looked terrible. But it grew nice. I had about 90, depending on, and we can fight about how you estimate feedstuffs, but 90 to 100 tons on, I think it was, did it go around to the, no, it was about 10 acres. We started with about 10 acres. And then I planted beans into that. I had 33 bushel beans. I don't think we had about $10 for them. But if I did get them sold at $10, that was $330 an acre. Rent was just over $200. Paid for the seed, the rent, and I got the feed, so I could. Sometimes just getting the feed on your place is more of a fight than paying for it. And so, I started shearing sheep, mostly because I needed the cash. It's good to stay in shape. And the biggest benefit for me has been I get my hands on thousands of ewes every year, thousands of lambs. I get to see everybody's operations. And how everyone does things, what does work, what doesn't work. I have some pictures later on of my handling facility. All of these ideas have come up from seeing other places, just going out and seeing them. And so it's been, I paid $125 for shearing school at SDSU, and I don't know if that was money well spent or not, but it keeps the tire guys in business, because I will put on 3,000 miles a month just on the shearing. So we run about a 100-mile radius of Slayton area. Oh, and I maybe didn't mention, I live in the Slayton area now, is where my farm, my grandparents' farm is, so, or was. And I ended up buying my grandparents' farm when they were talking about demolishing it, selling it, whatever they were going to do. So that's kind of where I started. Oh, yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm a little bit hard-headed. I was told that I could not pull this building through town. Well, they were half right. I couldn't pull it down Main Street. They didn't let me do that. But City of Westbrook has no jurisdiction over the county road. I went to the county. They let me pull it through town. Not everybody was pleased with that. Sometimes you have to find a loophole to make these things work. That's the point of this. We only hit one power line that day. It wasn't my fault. Yeah, like I say, this is going to be an unorthodox speech. So this is my sheep operation. Oh, this was the prevent plant year, and I had winter wheat as a cover crop. So I was able to harvest. We could not get the beans planted. It was way too wet. It rained every single day. It was 28. Was it 18 was so wet?
Yeah,
18 or 19. We had some wet years there. And so took the wheat, seeded covers, disked it lightly, rolled it in. This is what came up. I grazed for 90 days on this. I don't typically graze the entire ewe flock because you just have different groups. We'll get into that. Probably 300 head on 50 acres for 90 days. And okay, more about the sheep operation. Different times of the year. In spring, mostly we're lambing, weaning, just cleaning out barns, hauling manure. For me, we still have to be indoors the way the sheep operation is going to work. You can't, this lambing out on grass and things like that just isn't going to work for me at this time. I'm not saying it's never going to work, but anyway, in the summertime, we start shearing lambs, get the ewes out on pastures, put up a lot of hay, do a lot of road ditches. No one's crazy enough to go after the road ditches. We have some pretty steep ones. If you're willing to do it, you can pretty much get what you want. I don't do a lot of summer seeded covers. It's mostly late summer, early fall. And we'll talk about when not to graze and when not to seed covers. This year, I frost seeded everything because the weather was not contingent on that working out well. In the fall, so about the time frame we're in now, I'd say we're late fall, but flush the ewes, go through the flocks, condition score, sort out the culls, put up all of our bedding, start grazing, the cover crop residue, and in the wintertime, we start shearing the ewes. We shear ewes in the wintertime so that they get cold, so they go inside the building, so their lambs don't freeze out in the cold weather. They're photo breeders, I can't remember the word, dependent on daylight length. So they're not going to start ovulating until we have 60 days of decreasing daylight. So June 21st, the best, without using physical means or other means, hormones, stuff like that, or controlling daylight in the barns and things, you're not going to have much luck until the middle of August at the earliest. September 1st is the best time for me to start flushing and breeding. And then, so we're grazing residue. So we're shearing the ewes, getting them to have their lambs inside. Many times, more times than I would like, I have scraped frozen lambs off of the walls where they've frozen to the wall, stuff like that. Because if they lamb outside, the weather can be harsh for them. Get them in the barns where it's warm. We run them through pens. Someday Mark is going to let me do a talk on animal flow and handling facilities, but that's not this one. But another good thing when you're out grazing the residue, you get them off the place so you can finally do some work in your barns, get things set up. Oh, this is another picture of that same year. I don't have any fences put up. Those ewes, they're not going to run away on me. You can see the neighbors on the on the back side here. They have corn stalks out there. They did not want to go out into the corn stalks because there was better feed where I had adequate feed. So most years I get by, I don't put any fences up. I just turn them out. Most of the neighbors have done their tillage. The sheep are not going to walk out across black ground when they have cover crop to chew on close to home. One, I don't want to say it's a good trend, but it doesn't work for me. The neighbors have all decided that maybe this is not such a bad idea. So now the neighbors are starting. I've got 600 acres surrounding me that they're all doing no-till and doing some cover crop too. So now it's going to become more challenging for me. Well, if they let me. Not everybody appreciates, and not everyone understands that running that through the animal is more beneficial for the land as well, But anyway, well, why are we grazing? Yes, this is my daughter Hazel, and yes, that is alfalfa that she's got a mouthful of. And but anyway, if we have available feed, you want to use it. Instead of starting a feed wagon every day, you can bring the sheep to the feed or the cattle or anything that you're doing. You get your fertilizer put out in the field and you get the livestock off the farm, like I just said. And believe it or not, exercise is good for them. They're made to walk. They're designed to walk. They're designed to put their head down on the ground. And when it comes to shearing, I want those ewes as muscled up as possible. I like a challenge. You like to fight them a little bit. You just can't have these, these ewes that sit there and let you do it. You have to. Yes, this is a comedy show. You didn't know that was going to be. So anyway, what can we graze? We know we can graze pasture. Evidently, we can graze the silage bags. They just choose. They're going to go out and graze themselves sometimes. But crop residue and cover crops, we get the financial benefits of it. We'll go over that. And like I say, it all depends on your individual stocking rates, what you've got to work with. If you have 10 ewes or 2 cows, maybe it doesn't work for you. If you have a job in town and you can't keep an eye on things, maybe it doesn't work for you. But you might have enough labor or build fences or babysit them all day. I mean, it might be beneficial. So this one here, like I say, that picture of the cover crop where I had the sheep grazing, I call that more of a mob grazing. Just every day they go out. Your feed is all front loaded, where the most feed at that time of year, you're not getting a lot of daylight. You're not getting a lot of heat units. You're not growing as much to replenish. So just go out there, mob graze every day. I like to limit my timing on something like that. But anyway, and flash grazing. This was a picture of where we just grazed for 3 hours, and then someone at Farm Fest decided it was going to be smart to go and just mow this off where we had grazed. But anyway, you can, like I say, there's always a curveball. And you can overgraze, get it to the point where your animals are not in a positive energy state, and you just leave them out there and watch them dwindle away. I wouldn't recommend that, but you can do it. It's a way. And rotating paddocks, just constantly moving sheep. It might be 2 days, 3 days. Might be some people are moving twice a day. So anyway, when not to graze. There's a lot of choices you have to make, when you don't want to do it. If you don't have the time to get it done. Maybe there's been times where I put a flock of ewes out and only brought 12 fewer home than what I put out there because predators come and get them. If they're not in the right condition, I don't care if it's cattle or sheep, if they're not physically able to eat, to go out there, if their teeth are spreading, they're already too skinny, they just can't have the energy stores to be on the land, that you might have to keep them in the yard and feed them in the yard. That's just general choices you have to make day to day to make sure it works for you. Feed availability. And then how everything lands into your farming program. If you're corn, soybeans, maybe it doesn't work. Are you going to change your crop maturity, to complement your grazing timeline, what you want to do? How does that mesh with what your livestock needs are? I'm corn and soybeans, alfalfa, and so just basically I can graze in the fall. I don't like to graze in the spring, but I can graze it in the fall. Okay, we talked a little bit about condition scoring, and we'll get into that later. And when it comes to worms, everyone's run dewormers had parasite problems. Yes, no, some, a little bit. Breaking that cycle is important. In the cover crop corn and soybean rotation, I don't have much trouble with that as far as the cropland goes, but the pasture ground, that's just something to consider. Overgrazing, I brought this stick, the 4 inches. Do not overgraze or do not graze when it's that short. Anytime when I'm getting less than 4 inches is when I can start having worm problems. Whether that's because I'm not breaking the cycle or just that's where the worms tend to live, is in the bottom 4 inches of the plant. That's something to consider.
If you're worming, are you doing the whole flock or are you just doing as each group?
Yeah. Well, when they're dead, I don't have to worm them. I just let them dwindle away until they... No, we'll get into that. Like I say, there's 2 schools of thought on that, and if someone could tell me what the right way is, because I've had the same vet tell me, not the same day, but the same year, the 2 different ways. But anyway, this is really important. This nutrient tie-up and availability. There's, especially in the tillage radishes, you could have a calcium deficiency, and that will not present when they're in early to mid gestation. If you do that damage during gestation, especially on the ewes, I don't know as much about the cattle, you could have down ewes where they're starting to pull calcium out of their bones at that time, but it won't present until they're about 120 days pregnant. And now you're trying to solve a big problem, trying to get ewes back up on their feet as their lambs are growing. That can be an issue. There's minerals, molybdenum, and can tie up copper, and you can actually have copper deficiencies in sheep. Also not good, because you don't, when you're having trouble with copper is very dangerous to work with. You need about 2 parts per million per head per day, and that is tied to immune health, and you can have sick sheep, and then when you try to start putting your Band-Aid on and having to overfeed copper, then you can kill them the other way. So anyway, that's nutritionists help with this. And the iodine. If you have a sheep during gestation that is short on iodine, anyone know what can happen? Goiters on the lambs. And you'll have a perfectly viable lamb, good lamb, hit the ground, but he cannot nurse because that goiter stops his esophagus from taking the milk in. And that is a not very fun way. I did not learn that one the hard way. I knew someone who learned that the hard way, but I always put iodized salt out when I'm grazing cover crops. Not as, when you're using just summer pastures, that's not an issue, but there are problems that we cause with cover crops. There are solutions. Yeah.
What kind of free choice mineral are you putting out when you use
I'm making my own, mixing my own. So I will take limestone and yeast and other things that I mix together, dical, and what else? Oh, and I'll put vitamins in there, and then I'll use iodized salt blocks and just put a bucket out there. Most of the time, like when I'm grazing at home, I can bring everything back to the yard. So every night, and well, we'll go over that as well. So they have their normal mineral, what I would normally do, plus the over and the above when I'm grazing the cover crops. And always consult your nutritionist, because they're going to be the ones that actually know what's going on day to day for you. So, and I'm going to preface this with, I'm paying $100 an acre on 90 days. I don't know if that's a good pasture rent. We needed some numbers to go over this stuff. If that's way low or that's way high, when I rent my pasture, it comes with totally fenced. There's water supply and a retired sheep farmer that is going to watch everything, which works out great 90% of the time, except, sometimes you'll get a phone call that, oh yes, you had a ewe that was coughing today. Like, oh no, well, you got to come out and you got to come take care of this right now. She looked at me funny, but it's still a good thing because at least someone's out there watching. And so, yeah, one cow per acre. Am I out of line? This area, southwest Minnesota, southern Minnesota. It's been a while since I've grazed cows, so I worked for some people and we did that. But when it comes to the expense side of it, so yes, yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm using for costs for pasture expenses. Okay, crop residue. I'm just using some expenses for that. You have to spend some time every day doing something, fencing, whether you front load all of it, where you fence everything really well, you might have to spend 2 days doing it. I'm just trying to spread that out over 30 days. Fuel, you got to have four-wheeler, some or pickup, whatever you're using to manage this. I'm using numbers mostly based on a 40-acre minimum, because in my mind, I don't know if I'm going to do it if I'm doing it on less than 40 acres. It's just a place to start. This is not, if you choose to do it, on 20 acres, that's fine. Your costs are going to vary. So, and now I added seed cost on top of this. So I took my $75 from grazing crop residue a day, just made it $108, about $33 by the time you seed and buy the seed. So, okay, and dry lot expenses. This is just what I've got for these are my dry lots. I have some portable feeders here, permanent feeders there. And anyway, I had to give a value for facility expenses, 10 cents per head per day. You have to use something. You have to charge yourself a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to skew your numbers and say, oh, I can do this because it's way cheaper. Or maybe it's cheaper for you to feed every day. Anyway, so yes, and then you have to have tractor feed wagon, spread it out over 400 head. I'm just giving generic numbers. Okay, and for a gestation diet, which is about the time of year that I would normally be grazing, this is the offset. 2 pounds of alfalfa, 5 pounds of corn silage, and I think when I did the math, I added a pound of corn in, but anyway, got to 62 cents per head per day. Okay, corn silage. How does anyone price that? I'm asking because I'd like a better way. I'm taking the price of corn, I'm moving the decimal point, putting a 0 on it and calling it, if corn is $4.15, I'm just taking that per ton. I read that in a book somewhere. It sounded like it was simple and easy.
Some do the 7 to 9 bushels per ton.
Okay, Yeah, and if is that based on 180 bushel corn or 100? That's where I get hung up on. That is, if you took that back to your own yields, maybe,
Yes, if you guys would strips them and combine them or everything goes
Yeah.
across the scale.
Yep, crop insurance, or just take your farm average too. You can do that. Like I say, I'm not saying I'm doing it right. I'm just saying this is what I'm doing, and to come up with values. Could I get anyone to sell me corn silage today for $41 a ton? Probably not. Mostly because people put up silage for themselves and don't really want to sell it. But would I want to sell it for that? Probably not. I'd maybe have to have a little more. But anyway, that's how I did that. And instead of factoring in equipment costs and water and things, I just said 50 cents per head per day to feed a cow. There again, I'm relying on you guys to tell me that I'm way out of line, which I'm fine with being out of line. I did not factor in any bedding on this, just so came up to about $1.90, So anyway, I just wanted to show what it costs, pasture versus your crop residue, then adding in covers and your dry lot. So on cattle, so this is per day and then per month. So, hey, hang on. Yes, on the pasture. So what it would cost per day to graze the cow on the pasture. And, oh shoot, my contact fell out. I was looking around too much. What's that? No, it's in my eye yet. That's all right. That's all right. Driving home might be a little bit challenging. Just the way my days go. It's always a curveball. Oh, shoot. Well, we're just going to put that away and I'll be just fine. Don't worry about me.
July patch.
Yep. Oh, shoot. Sometimes when I look around the room real fast, that can happen. But anyway, so, okay, I had $2 a day to graze pasture, and your prices might be different. Residue, hopefully that price comes down per day. Your land costs are going to be, should be lower because you're complementing your farming operation, or someone's farming operation. Doesn't have to be yours. But anyway, I'm just trying to show that $57 per head per month could be your cost for grazing. So if you wanted to go out and rent some ground, if Jerry's got cover crop on his land and says, hey, I'd like someone to come and graze it, well, I'm looking at $50 to $60 expense just for doing that a month per head. So if he wants $25 an acre, so now we're talking $75, $85 a month per acre, per head, or however you want to. You can do a lot with the math to make things, to convince yourself that you want to do something. Okay, so with the cover crop on your residue, yes, your prices are going to go up. Now, are we going to get more than 30 days on it? Is that possible? So I'm using numbers over a month, but typically you're going to rent ground, if you rent to graze on something, you'll get it for the season. Weather might say you might get 2 feet of snow by the third day, and you might have to, shorten things up quite a bit. So, but that's why I have that in red. Just wanted to show that, yes, it's more expensive, but if you divide that over 60 days, you would cut those numbers in half. Versus your dry lotting, you know what you're going to do every day. You know what your chores are going to be. It's pretty well controlled in the dry lot setting. It's cheaper out on pasture, but I might not have predator pressure. I might not have, other factors that we talked about. This might work for you. It might not work to go out and graze your cover crops, even if you're planting cover crops. So,
What are the main predators?
coyotes for us. Hunters, guys like Mark Gutierrez, just with hungry eyes. When we took him to Farm Fest, he was just wishing we could grill one. So this year, anyone have prevent plant acres this year? So in our area, there was a lot of prevent plant acres, especially south of Fulda. I had friends, half sections, all had to go. They planted cover crops, but they took advantage of it. They were able to use their cover crops and graze them. So when it comes to the grazing, we just have to pay attention to what crop insurance is willing to let you do. When it comes to haying, they might have different cutoffs. I feel like crop insurance changes their rules every year. And that's my own personal beef that I have with them. But anyway, just things to be mindful of. You need to talk to your crop insurance agent or have the owner of the land talk to the crop insurance agent. Yeah, we can get more use out of the land, especially if you're in a government program where they want you using cover crops. Well, now we have a feed source too, and we can utilize that land over more months out of the year. And anyway, yeah, we can rent, and maybe you don't have any livestock, but you can rent it out, and that's fine too. And yes, we have USDA programs that can help with all of this. EQIP is a big one. Okay, but can't do any of it without a plan. And even if we have a poor plan, at least we're starting somewhere, right? Right? And I don't know what your goals would be. My goals are to make things as cheap as possible, as easy as possible. You know, that's my own personal goal. But we also have to know what we're putting out onto the field before, these ewes, they don't look very good to me. This is the group that I sorted off and didn't graze that year. Just happened to take a picture. Actually, I was taking a picture more of the handling facility, but it just so happened it worked out good for this presentation. So anyway, and this is our handling facility that has been worked very well for me, and I built this based on what I learned when I was out sharing, getting out to other people's places and watching this. So, but yeah, and if something doesn't work, maybe, so this year, I did not graze. I did not graze any ewes this year. It was so dry, I did not want to seed my cover crop. We don't have any NRCS people here, right? I don't want them to, oh, can you plug your ears just for a moment? Don't turn me in. Maybe blur the camera for a moment. But anyway, it was too dry. None of the neighbors did any tillage. It was just too hard to even do any tillage. So I chose not to graze, and instead I baled all the stalks off, round bales, hauled them to the yard. Then I seeded my cover crop, and but nothing germinated. And then I've just been feeding that residue through my TMR during early gestation. I don't need the nutrients, so it didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out this year, but you just have to be willing to make adjustments. And condition scoring. So on a cow, that's a lot easier, isn't it? You look at them and you say, all right, you're an 8+, or you look like I can see through the skeleton. You might be a 3 body condition score. Maybe I'm going to keep that one in the yard. I might sort her off, keep her in the yard. So I found a skinny ewe, and yeah, I just put my hand over her back. I'm feeling for the ribs. There's 5 hip pins there, about where my left hand is there. And if I can feel all of those, she's going to stay in the yard. Her teeth might be spreading. She just might not be able to digest. She has a blue circle on her. She's an open at the moment here. If she does not get bred, she's going to town. And anyway, so we have our time frames. Does this work? That really doesn't show up on the screen.
Nope.
Anyway, So we have maintenance. That's when you just have an open ewe. We're flushing, trying to increase her plant of nutrition so that she ovulates. I mean, go into early gestation. Hopefully she would get bred. Hopefully the first cycle on the first day. That would be fantastic if it all worked out that way. Then we have early gestation. So flushing, early gestation, we can be out on the cover crops, out on the crop residue, or in the dry lot, just depending on the year. Then we go late gestation, about this week, time of year, this week. I would bring everything back, maybe do some sorting, sort out my different breeding groups, whatever it takes, shear, and then the lamb. Now we have to go on a lot more feed during lactation. And then when we get to dry down, we basically cut their nutrition down to very little to get them to stop lactating. So I need to meet my requirements, all of these time frames. So I'm looking at TDN, and in cattle guys, you're looking at NEGs. It used to be TDN, that's what I was taught, but evidently my professor was old school. Crude protein, calcium, phosphorus. In sheep, we have to keep these in check and balance with each other. I think it's 3-to-1. Can't remember all of this off the top of my head. And so, and yes, what I'm watching TDN, crude protein, my moisture, so my percent dry matter. So anytime I'm making a dry lot ration, that's very important to me. Should be important to everyone, but it's important to me, and that's who I'm worried about when I'm doing chores. So particle size on the sheep, I'm just showing a picture. That's probably the smallest silage you've seen. Very fine. I like it if it comes out of the bag as toothpaste. That works good for me. Just more palatable. There's a lot less sorting. And I test, and I test, and I test. I probably a dozen tests a year. We don't test dry corn very often, but I have tested dry corn. But I test all of my wet feed stuffs, anything I chop, anything that I ensile, all my dry hay. I test it all, so I know what I'm working with. Yeah. Now I'm working with Big Gain out of Mankato here, but I was always sending it to DHIA Labs. Was that St. Cloud or Sauk Center? Sauk Center, I think, is what I was doing. Yeah, their prices kept going up. They were pushing $17 a test, and then Big Gain showed up and said, "Hey, as long as you pay way too much for your feed, we'll do all your testing for you." And so, I wish I was joking. That really not. That's what happened, But working with a nutritionist has that value of, I think most of that feed ends up being about $20 a ton higher than where I could buy it elsewhere. They stand behind it. They've been good to me. That's why I choose to go that way. Okay, so now we're going to get into the weeds a little bit. Hopefully we don't get into a fist fight. So for these different time frames, I have just the requirements: TDN for cattle, TDN for sheep, crude protein for cattle, crude protein for sheep. I'm much more familiar with the crude protein needs for the sheep. When we got bogged down with NEGs versus TDN, when I was talking to the nutritionist about this, he didn't have requirements for these time frames, mostly because sheep, they like to take some time off. You're going to dry down and then have to just maintain. They have no productive value. For me, it's June, July, and August. So I have maintenance requirements where he said, cattle, you're lactating and breeding, it all kind of rolls into the next time frame. So anyway, so these are just the requirements that I'm trying to meet. So when I'm out grazing cover crops, I need to get to these levels. So what do we typically have out there? Corn stover, turnip roots, ryegrass, well, the rye as a grass, and then tops of the turnips. We have soybean straw, corn and soybeans, out in the field, because we can't all have gleaners. And so I'm going to have a little bit of grain out there. And anyway, so I just took out of my sheep book the values of this is just generic values for total digestible nutrients. At 59, this is all as a percent. So percent TDN for this feed stuff, percent crude protein for this feed stuff, and our typical dry matter. So this slide is all for sheep. If I wanted to meet her TDN needs on just corn stover, just the corn stalks, she'd have to eat 4.87 pounds. That's the math that I did. That's what I came up with. If I wanted her to just eat corn stalks, so I'm just out grazing corn stalks, there's no covers or anything, to get her crude protein requirements, and this is for my flushing diet, she'd have to eat 9 pounds. Is she going to eat 9 pounds? Is she going to eat 5 pounds? Can she meet her TDN requirements on 5? Can she physically eat enough to get that? I would argue probably not. She could, maybe the first day. Remember, all of our feed is front loaded. If you combine on October 10th, you turn them out on the 11th. The best feed that's going to be there is on the first day. You start talking 4 or 5 rain events after that, our feed values are going to be decreasing. It's not going to be there. But anyway, back to this. Eat just the turnip bulbs. 33 pounds is what she's going to have to eat of just that. So I'm just trying to show that we need to have diversity out there. Now we're going to have corn grain. If you have corn stalks, you're going to have corn grain. Well, they can eat 2 pounds, 3 pounds of it, get their TDN levels. To get enough protein just for flushing, now I would argue that she probably has to eat more corn. And she shouldn't, number one, you're going to have acidosis problems. So I'm just showing on paper that maybe it would be a good thing to limit your time out there, because the first day, if you have all that feed out there, they can go and overload. Acidosis, lots of other problems. Soybean grain, they're going to have to eat less of that. And a lot of this is tied back to what my dry matter is. They have to eat so many pounds on an as-fed basis of standing grass because it's just a wetter feed. You're eating a lot of water. And this is the first time I've ever had to do the math where I'm working it backwards, back to an as-fed basis. I usually do the math to get to a dry matter basis and then just add water until I'm happy with my water content. So anyway, then early gestation, need a little bit less nutrients, as we get away from flushing into gestation. Once they've been bred, now we just need to maintain that body condition score. So it takes a little less feed, so maybe this is the time frame where they need a little less feed. We might flush in the yard where we can control the feedstuffs a little bit better, and then go out and then start grazing the residues. So, and I had a lot of fun with this one because I did this math. So this is in the cattle, and I had to call the nutritionist. I said, my math worked out great for the sheep. Something is going on with the cattle here. I cannot get, if I'm out grazing corn stalks, 22 pounds for TDN? Like, okay, well, cow can eat 22 pounds as anything in a day, can't she? That's reasonable. But this crude protein, this is really throwing me off. That is a lot of feed, and they're not going to eat that. And then I remembered back when I was in college and we were grazing cows out on the stalks. Oh yeah, did we put some lick tubs and things out there? So I called the nutritionist. He goes, oh yes, you got to make sure you got to have some protein in lick tubs out there just for digestion. It's just for digestion. That's all it is. Just enough to get them digesting. Well, I'm doing this math and it seems to me like it might take a little bit more than just for digestion. And we did have a good conversation about, now one of the main ingredients they use in that is urea, and somehow, and I'm going to have to talk more about this on the multiplication factor of how urea can have 250% protein levels these are things I don't understand. I just want to be clear on that. But all I'm showing here is, especially when it comes to the cows, it wouldn't hurt to have a supplemental program. Whether you're feeding in the yard, supplementing feed every evening, or having lick tubs out there, bringing hay out to the field, that's going to be important. Most important, water. Got to have a water source, and that feed has to be 50%. At least, I've heard numbers in a range from 50.1 up to 55% before the microbes can do anything in that rumen. I did not know this prior to 3 years ago. I just thought, well, I'm going to just feed my sheep. They can drink water. The time that it takes for that feed to absorb, you're already losing some of that nutritional value. So I had a group, it was probably 150 ewes, skinny ewes. I was feeding them for 30 days. Could not put weight on them. Just could not put weight on them. They physically could not eat enough of the dry hay to put weight on them. And it's getting to be breeding time, and I'm getting worried. So I talked to the nutritionist, and he explains to me this very simple thing that I should have learned in college when I paid $40,000 for an education that didn't teach me what I needed to know. I started adding water to my feed ration. I got it up to about 48% moisture. I could not catch up to those ewes. They started going up on feed. I could not catch up to them until I was at 6.5 pounds of dry matter, and I started at 4 pounds of dry matter. Well, now we're in a positive energy state. Now we're gaining weight. Now we're flushing embryos. Now we're fertilizing them. Now we're settling them. And did not know how important it was, but yeah.
You just added water to
Yep. I just welded a piece of pipe on. So I stick the hose in, drilled a hole in the pipe, welded a wing nut to the bolt, and I have not driven away with the hose attached yet, but I have a feeling someday that will happen. So, salt, mineral. Yes, I'm not a good parent. There's a lot of pictures of I let my kids do something, so then, oh, you're doing this, I'll take a picture. Now I'll stop the act. But anyway, salt, vitamins, A, D, E, and K. A and D, fairly common, don't need to supplement that. Vitamin K, any idea what that does? Blood clotting, excellent. Very important when it comes to building livers, kidneys, organs, hearts. Gestation is the time that we're doing these things. Cutting costs and corners on these can be very expensive. It's not that hard. It might not be readily available when you're out grazing on cover crops. Vitamin E is another interesting one when it comes to conception. They did studies on dairy cows, trying to get, what's the biggest problem with dairy cattle? Getting them to breed back, to come back into a lactation cycle. I read a study, they doubled the amount of vitamin E and increased conception rates by 50%. Oh, well, I'm dealing with a ruminant. I think I can apply the same thing. And I took my conception rate. We were running about 92% on the flock for the year. Last year I was 98%. This year I'm already at 98%, and I still have another opportunity to check again. I have doubled. I need 150 IUs of vitamin E per head per day, and I feed at a level of 100 or 300 now. And the way when I'm out on cover crops, the way I do that is I turn them out on the cover crops, mix up some feed at home with my mineral mix or whatever I'm doing with enough protein just to make sure that I have enough. Feed that in the yard. They go out and graze for 2-3 hours, bring them back, then they eat, and then I know that they've gotten the levels that I want them to have. Whether that's the right level, I don't know, but it's what I want them to have. So we talked about iron, copper, iodine, and tie-up. So it is very important to go out and look. And some days my wife says, yes, I looked at that. And I will walk out there and it will be nothing like she said it was. Or my kid, I don't have to single her out. You need to look with your eyes. Physically look at it. Spend some time. Now, I just thought this was a good picture. This might just be the smart guy. It's actually raining at Farm Fest when we're up there. The guy taking the picture is out in the rain. I'm just the smart guy in the trailer. But anyway, taking a look what they're doing, what they ate first, what they ate last, what they're refusing to eat. It's a good management practice. Go out there, take a look every day. Might be expensive, might not want to do it. Weather might be bad. For success, that's something that needs to happen. Okay, who's asking about the parasites?
Oh, I just.
The worms. And,
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to prevent it. We can rotate our pastures, try not to overgraze, break some cycles. You get worms. Lungworms, liverworms, flukes, any sort of parasite. I've been told 2 different ways by the same veterinarians, not the same day, but could be in the same month. Well, we're going to use one dewormer, and you just keep using that. And as long as it's working, you use it. You got to make sure you're dry lotting at least 24 hours after worming your ewes, and you break that larvae cycle. Then I'll have another vet come and tell me that, well, you use 2 different wormers, different modes of action, different times of the year. My worming program right now is before breeding time. I will give an oral dewormer. That particular one will interfere with a pregnant animal, so you got to give it when they're not pregnant. So I do it prior to breeding, and then I'll come back with an injectable that's safe on the gestating lambs. And if like last year when it was warm, worms are more active in warmer weather. I came back and did a feed additive for 3 days and knocked them out that way. So I do not want the worm cycle to continue. I want those worms dead, because when that ewe has her lambs, the worms can become active because she's in a weakened state. They'll become more active, pass them right on to her lambs at that time. So anyway, yes, and you can take fecal samples. The vets just beg to do it. It's easy money for them. I have vets, I'm going to be driving by your place. Can I stop and take some fecal samples? No, you're not going to take fecal samples. All you want is a $200 check. That's what you really want. And so, anyway, and I was wondering if someone was going to be here to pester me about these parasite-resistant animals, like hair sheep. That's the big claim to fame. Oh yes, they're parasite-resistant. Well, we can go down a long road of yes, they may be parasite-resistant, but there's going to be many other factors when it comes to frame size, marketability, and why, me in particular, why I'm not utilizing that type of animal. Plus, as a sheep shearer, yes, 2 high fives. As a sheep shearer, I don't like the hair sheep. That's my bread and butter, right? And so, anyway, now we're looking at parasite load. I got so lucky the other day when I found one with worms, right? Any guess which is which? Because we're gray, we're pale. We're just looking at the eyeball and the skin. I didn't get the skin turned up as well on that as I did here. See how she's nice and pink? That's healthy. And that previous slide on the condition scoring, let me just run back to it here. This one. The one with worms is this ewe, this skinny looking ewe. The one without worms is the one in front of her, and I got very lucky when I was checking. I said, hey, let's just pull the eyeball on this. Oh, hey, honey, go get the camera. I got worms. I'm so excited. Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. So She has worms. What am I going to do? I'm going to treat them, right? And so, anyway, yes, and here, this is what your soil can look like after no-tilling for 8 years, I think, was where that picture was taken. I just opened the soil up. I mean, we've got worms, earthworms working that soil. So, to help me do all this, right, I've got friends or salesmen, guys that like to take advantage of me. What's that?
And you chew me out.
And yeah, well, like I say, it's a give and take. But anyway, I do a lot of reading, get a lot of this. The No-Till magazine, that's a great one. And Jerry is the one that made me buy it. So I have to spend a little money every year on that. But it's been a very good resource for me. Nutritionists, agronomists, Minnesota Soil Health Coalition, mentorship programs. And you can just Google some of these things. Just learning on your own. And lastly, this is not ranked in any particular order, but the NRCS might be a good resource. No, they've been a very good resource, and they're there for the farmers. That's what they're here for. A lot of knowledgeable people that went to school to learn how to do this. So anyway, how are we doing on time?
That was the high five. So
That was-
about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, well, we'll just go
It's
through.
just lunch next, so yeah.
Oh, well, I assume everyone would skip lunch just to see more of the sheep, right? And so, anyway, best management practices, stocking density. When I'm grazing without fences, I need to make sure that my commodity shed is locked up. They can't get into the yard. If you have a poor grain cart driver, clean up your piles of corn that they left out in the field. Just general things. Maybe limiting time out in the field. On sheep, they can eat everything they need in a day in 3 hours, as long as there's adequate feed supply. So, okay. And like I was saying, talk about the maturity of the cash crop. Earlier maturing corn or beans, you plant an early bean, a 1-3. Save yourself 2 weeks, 10 days. Maybe get that cover crop started sooner, if those are your goals. Maybe you don't want to, sacrifice any maturity in your corn or your beans just to get grazing 10 days sooner. That's up to you. Fences, like I said, I don't use fences. The weather, if you get 2 feet of snow on the 10th of October, maybe you're not grazing.
Don't they go down through the snow for that? Cattle will.
Yeah. Sheep, they fighting through that. Now, if I talk about 3 hours, it might take them longer than 3 hours. If 4 inches of snow is a different story than 2 feet of snow. But yes, yes, they will go through snow. But your growing season is over. If you have even 6 inches of snow, that rye is no longer going to be growing 2 inches a day. Now you're limiting your feed source. So, and grain loss. If you have a chopping head, I like to have my stalks long, standing up through here, as opposed to smothering out that cover crop. And so it's just a fun thing we did this year. Incorporate, I've been planting into the cover crops all year. This is an alfalfa stand, just pretty picture. I planted into that this year. This is that same, you can just barely see these 2 trees back off here. That's what that corn looked like after 6 weeks or so. Same trees, same spot here. That's what it looked like at tassel. Had 192 bushel corn, planting green into alfalfa like that. So, suppressed my weeds, I absorbed my water, protected my soil, and it doesn't have to just be rye and turnips. I mean, a cover crop is just that, what you're using for cover. Yeah.
How did you terminate the alfalfa in this situation?
Surpass is what I used. 25 gallons of water. Made sure I killed it. And then I came back with Callisto. I'm still higher inputs, higher contact. I like this stuff to work. I want to know that it works. Yeah. That was not Roundup Ready alfalfa.
Otherwise, it takes out Roundup Ready.
Yep. You could use Liberty. It just, I was able to use a product I used on all my acres, also worked for the alfalfa. So, but I'm not going to plant alfalfa as a grazing tool either, because I don't like to bloat my ewes. So, manage your cover crops. Talked about all that. One thing to be careful of, maybe, and Jerry, now I'm going to really pick on you. When it comes to seeds per pound and dollars per pound, we've done some good work trying to get more seeds for less money.
It kind of depends on what you're dealing with. I mean, if you got into turnips, you got zillions of seeds per pound. It's very inexpensive. Livestock like it.
Yep.
Deer love it if you're a deer hunter.
Yep.
Rape is another one that's fairly cheap.
Yep.
You get a lot of seeds per pound. So you can use some of them in your mix. And it just gives you different roots in the soil. So you're not doing the same thing all the time.
Yep.
I do had one cattle feeder, he had 80 acres. Every year he'd put half of it triticale, the other half cereal rye. And then the next year he'd do it, flip it. And I said, why are you doing that? Well, triticale is supposed to be better feed, but it doesn't overwinter as good as cereal rye. So he just gave him a choice for when he calved, that's where they went. They went to that 80 until he was done calving and then out pasture.
Yep. And then he had a nice rye pasture to graze on. So anyway, these are pictures from my farm. Which one looks better? The top one. That's ground that was no-till cover. So both fields were taken over from the same previous farmer. This is 8 years of no-till. This is the first year. This is what I inherited as soil. That was blowing away in the wind. That was nice and lush. Half mile apart. So, neighbor farms next to me there. He's full tillage. I'm driving up the road. What am I seeing here? I'm thinking my alfalfa is dying. I'm terrified. I have to run out there. No, it's all the neighbor's soil blowing over on drifts. The alfalfa did come through, but the neighbor's dirt drifts are killing my alfalfa. That's telling me how much is out in the air, what I'm collecting. Now,
Free soil.
topsoil, hey, there's P and K there. And so now we have a few, it's not all just roses, right? I promise my kids did not learn any bad words that day. They already knew them. I did finish planting, but anyway, the deer loved that field. They grazed that. Well, and then they were shedding their antlers, and I didn't get them all picked up. Well, I did get them all picked up. I just did it the hard way. So, but we can have, sheep, cattle, they like to move in herds, trail nose to tail. They can put ruts out in your field. Something you may have to deal with. You may have to rotary hoe, lightly disc, do something to manage that. Wet years, you can have foot issues, especially in the sheep. Soybean stalks, sharp, getting between the toes, poking that foot, lame sheep. Phantom loss before they shut me down here. Like I mentioned about front loading all your feed, the first day they have access to as much feed as they could ever have. I do feel that there can be some phantom loss, embryos absorbed during gestation. They're walking a lot of miles. If they're not accustomed to it, you may have to increase grain loads in a dry lot setting before you turn out onto the stocks. It's all a matter of looking with your eyes, going out, counting kernels on the ground. It's just a management practice you may have to do to minimize these things. I'm not saying it happens all the time. That's something I can't measure. You don't know what you don't know, what you didn't have. But anyway, predators are an issue. Wildlife, neighbor, he's just grazing corn stalks right now. He's very upset. All the deer are taking out his fences and his cows are getting out. He's also been grazing on just corn stalks for the last 50 days. Those things are hungry. I think they're just getting out. But wildlife, and like the picture I have here, we did cut that apart. We made a keychain out of it so I don't forget the good days. And a negative, it might be labor intensive. It might take some management. You know, maybe you're a low management kind of operator, and or it might take more time over and above what you're used to. So it might they get out. My rule of thumb was if they start causing problems 3 times, they get up to the neighbor lady's front step one more time, they're going in the yard. They're going to be done. Yes, that's happened. So anyway, and I'm strictly green tractors, but Olivers count. So that's a team effort. But any questions on that? On anything? Doesn't have to be this. Oh, I was so thorough, or everyone's still sleeping.
Well, for me, listening to this, it sounds like you're talking about this management. You got to be out there. It sounds like you enjoy that part. You like being with.
Yeah, the giving the speech part, I hate this.
Yeah.
I'm not enjoying this. I would, like yesterday, I skipped all day. I didn't go to any of the tours because I went home and I worked, because that's what I like to do. So, yeah.
Mentioned the difference between the hair sheep and the wool sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just the fact that you like the shearing, or
Well, it's one of there's several. So,
or is there another more negative?
well, when it comes to marketing, you have on the hair sheep, they're just genetically, they don't have the same frame size. We're getting paid when we're selling our lambs, we're getting paid on a carcass price. They've been telling us, and they used to not tell us verbally that they wanted bigger lambs. They said, oh, we'll take any lambs you've got. Now, but they would pay us. The bigger carcass, they'd pay us more money. Well, I'm voting with my checkbook too. If you're going to pay me more for a heavier carcass, 75, 85 pound carcass, well, I need a genetic line that's going to do that. They are set up at the plant to harvest pelts. When they get a hair sheep, you can't have that hair in contact with your wool pelts. They have to shut things down, change things when times get tough. Right now, times are average in the sheep industry. Everything's going fine. Everything's getting killed. Everything's getting worked through. When times get real tough, the first ones that they'll no sale are the hair sheep. So that's why I'm cautious about the hair sheep. Now, if you're selling direct to consumer and they don't mind and you're throwing pelts away, that's totally viable option. And yeah.
If you're finished with that, can you elaborate on your marketing then? Or you take them direct to packer?
Yep, I have a contract. My lambs are contracted with Denver, Superior Farms out of Denver. And I sell groups of 40 at a time. Live weights are about 140 pounds. All my lambs are finished on corn grain mix, pellet, soy hulls, wheat mids with yeast and additives and grain corn. So, did you have a question?
I can't remember.
Oh, okay. Well, you'll remember. You can pester me at lunch. Well, you had already gotten 2 questions, so I wanted to give her a chance. So.
What about,
Yeah.
you said you got a dog to work sheep?
Yep.
Elaborate on that, or have you tried guard dogs in the past?
I haven't used guard dogs. I really like my mutts. My mutts are very teachable. If you do chores every day and you get the same system, they learn your commands, and then they become good sheepdogs. We did finally, and I had some cute pictures of my daughter, my youngest daughter, with the dog, but I didn't put it in here. I did finally buy an actual sheepdog. He's junk. All that premier breeding and all that, we didn't spend a lot of money on him, but we, actually more than the cost of the fuel to go pick him up, and he's not the same animal that my mutts are. But he's going to be good, and my daughters love him as an animal. So yeah,
I remember.
good.
How do you get all those sheep back if, you said you don't have any fences?
That's what the dogs are. Well, what I actually do, what I do is I call the dogs over, and I pet the dogs, and I watch my wife do it all. She gets in the pickup, and that's the reality. I don't know why you're laughing, because that's actually what I do. But no, the dogs will follow the pickup, the four-wheelers. After 2 hours of grazing, especially if it's predominantly corn stalks, they're getting thirsty anyway. They kind of tell you when it's ready to come.
Like a mobile water or anything, they have to come back to the yard.
I do have that if I haul, if I build a pen, a permanent pen up at a different farm, and I've only done that once. I'd have a water station and then use the water as the bait to get them to that corral station. And once they kind of learn, we're gonna get to graze for 2-3 hours. It's 2.5 hours go by and they're coming home already. Except for the ones that refuse to come home, and then you always have things like that. So, anything else? I can talk about this for days. So.
Fencing requirement, can you get by with a single strand hot wire?
Not on the sheep, but the neighbor is doing that with the cows. And like I say, I've talked to him quite a bit. I'd like to see some cover crops out there, so they've got a little more to chew on. But yeah, he gets by with a single wire. If you're going to fence, 3 hot poly wires is what I've done in the past. But Premier equipment out of what town is it in Missouri? That's where you can buy. You can buy all the cattle stuff out of that company as well, but they're geared towards sheep. Baumgars, they have a lot of fencing equipment for the cattle. What would work for cattle? But the sheep, like that netting. Oh, I've got to show. That was all Premier netting with solar panel. You can see this right on the edge here. The solar station, I think, was set up probably right behind the door there. But anyway, solar panel, charger, gives one hell of a zap. Like, you'll remember it. And so it does a good job. It kept those sheep in at Farm Fest. The last thing I wanted was sheep running all over at Farm Fest. And we did a flash graze there. Mark was in charge of that, and that's what we grazed there. And then we had them at Farm Fest, and it was good to have some sheep at Farm Fest. It was something new. Took a lot of pictures, and doing that, we were moving. Were they moving twice a day?
I didn't get there, I was combining it.
Oh, I was.
I was combining it.
Yeah, well, we were combining wheat, and I brought the sheep up, and then I left. But I think they moved them twice a day. And when I loaded them up that last day on these heavy cover, well, I shouldn't really call this a cover crop. These are just heavy feed source here. They were so full, they could hardly chew their cud. They were just laying there, just fat and happy, and after 3 days of that, but that's the importance of moving pastures. Every time they got to a new, if it was time to move, they'd start eating again. That was the way to put pounds on them. It was working good. So, any other questions on well, is it time to be done?
It is. It's
It is.
lunchtime.
Okay. I could talk about the handling facilities.
Yeah, folks are free to stay, but they're also free to head out for lunch.
These are all squares. Squares aren't supposed to work with livestock. Oh, go ahead.
Question, I don't know if maybe when I was out talked about, have you had any problems with any foot rot being on the dry lot?
Yeah.
And do you think that's a nutritional thing, or because
More of a pathogen.
we rotationally graze some,
Yep.
and if it's on more alfalfa than grass, they seem to go lame on it, just some of them, and then you pull them off that alfalfa, it goes away.
Yeah, so the way the alfalfa plant with the harder stalk is what I've seen, like with the soybean stubble. I've seen foot issues with that. Now, when it comes to an actual foot rot, I've had some issues with that, and that's more of a pathogen because I'm out shearing sheep, working at everyone else's places. Yes, I change clothes. I go through foot baths. I change my shoes. I do those good practices. But it only takes one opportunity, and now I've had some issues. And I've got some,
It's genetics too.
and some of
We
it's,
had some that are 11 years old that never had
Yeah.
single issue, another one.
Yep. It seems to me like the more Western type Rambouillet Targhee ewe that I have, the more susceptible they are. My Polypay type, more fin type sheep don't seem to have those foot issues Could be some genetic, some environmental issues like that. But anyway, this is, I mean, I bet there's 100 tore up pieces of paper on trying to map out how this worked. This is a bud box. If anyone's looked into, go watch on YouTube how the bud boxes work. My 6-year-old daughter can fill these chutes for me. All the gates swing. I can open and close every gate here with one hand. I can hold this stick. I can open this gate. There's a square pen right off of this. They make circles around you inside a square pen. They run right up the chute. This is where we used to have bad words said all the time, and now we hardly talk to each other because things just work good. I have working pens on the side. This is a long working pen, and then I have short pens off to the front. I can go through 200 or more ewes by myself in an hour. Loading pens, I mean, it was unheard of 2 years ago. If I wanted to work 200 ewes, I'm getting 2 to 3 people, and we're gonna spend the afternoon doing this. And now it's down to a one-man job. Guardrail, hog gates out of hog barns. I've run into people or a trucking company that has to haul hog pens to scrap, and he'll call me up and say, "Hey, do you have $1,000?" "Yeah," or what's going on? "Okay, be ready to unload me at 8 o'clock in your yard. Have cash ready." Okay, so you get all these gates, start building.